Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is George Herrera with the Queens Home team at Keller Williams Realty. In today's video, I'm talking about appraisal contingencies. So the way I'd like to cover this is what is an appraisal contingency and when should you decide to waive it, if at all. How can you use the appraisal contingency as part of your terms whenever you make an offer on a property? So what is an appraisal contingency? So here in New York and most of the country, a standard real estate contract will have an appraisal contingency, a standard appraisal contingency, which means that the property must appraise for the contract price in order to satisfy that condition, right? So that contingency protects the buyer in the event of a low appraisal. So with a standard appraisal contingency, if the property doesn't appraise for some reason, then generally or typically a buyer would be able to back out at that point and receive their deposit back if they don't want to move forward at anything below the appraised value. So an appraisal comes in low. Now, if there's a standard appraisal contingency in the contract, the buyer can have the option to walk away and receive their deposit back if they want. Most of the time, however, it leads to a renegotiation. So if an appraisal comes in low and there's a standard appraisal contingency, typically the seller will have to come down a little, buyer will have to add more to their down payment, come up with more cash. That difference, whatever that difference is, has to be made up in one way or another. And that's either the buyer putting more money down or the seller coming down in the price. Or many times you have a negotiation where each side is giving a little bit and you come to a new win-win agreement, right? So that's what happens whenever you have a low appraisal or it doesn't come in at the contract price. So that's a standard appraisal contingency. Most contracts will have them. Now, when should you actually waive the appraisal contingency? Meaning you can make an offer on a property and say, part of the terms of my offer are that there's no appraisal contingency. So we're waiving it. We're removing the appraisal contingency from the contract. And the only time you should do that is when you're prepared to make up the difference in the form of more down payment, and regardless of whatever the bank appraises the house for, you're willing to purchase the property for that contract price. And this is common here in Queens. We see them a lot where people make an offer and they do waive the appraisal contingency, because if they're making that offer, that means you're willing to pay that much for the property. Now, for people who are more liquid and they have more money accessible to them, in the event of a low appraisal, they can say no appraisal contingency, meaning that no matter what the bank appraises this property for, we will move forward with the purchase. And so what ends up happening is whatever that difference is, you would be agreeing up front to make up the difference in the form of more down payment, more cash. And then that obviously is very attractive to the seller, because then the seller doesn't even have to worry about what the property appraises for. If it comes in low for some reason, then they know that that difference is being made up, and they know that whatever the contract price is, that's the price that they will be netting their net profit from. So definitely it's an attractive term, but the things you want to be mindful of whenever you offer no appraisal contingency, or whenever you decide to waive the appraisal contingency, it always helps to have a really good idea of what the comps are showing. And so if you have a buyer's agent, they'll be able to go over comps with you. If you don't have a buyer's agent, then unfortunately you might have a hard time actually getting the true comps for the property. But if you have a buyer's agent, then they should be able to share comps with you. You go over the comps together, and a good agent will be able to tell you what they believe is a justifiable valuation in terms of the appraisal, what they think the property can appraise for by the bank. Now, knowing that gives you an idea of what a low appraisal might look like and what the difference in cash that might be needed might be. So definitely, if you offer no appraisal contingency, it's good to know where the comps are at and what a realistic appraisal amount might be, because then at least if it does come in low, you have an idea of what you might have to come out of pocket for in order to make up the difference. But Also, don't offer no appraisal contingency or don't waive the appraisal contingency unless you are in a position to do so, because appraisals can come in low, and it's not uncommon where, especially if you're getting a high price for the area in comparison to comparable properties in the area, it can happen where an appraisal can come in low, and then that difference has to be made up. If you waive the appraisal contingency, then the onus is on you to make up that difference, and you just want to make sure, if you offer this term, that you're in a position to come up with those additional funds in order to make up the difference in that type of scenario. And again, in those situations, the comps really help to give you a realistic idea of what the property might appraise for. All right, hopefully that answers the question and gives you a little more understanding of a standard appraisal contingency in a real estate contract and how you can use this term when you're making offers, if you decide to waive the appraisal contingency altogether. And then you can also do partial waivers of appraisal contingency as well. If you have any questions related to this, feel free to drop them in the comments below. You can also send us a message through our website, queenshometeam.com/help. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have related to appraisal contingencies. Also, if you have any suggestions for future videos, future topics that we can cover on the channel, drop them in the comments below and we'll add them to our list so we can shoot a video in the future. Thanks as always for tuning in, y'all. Stay tuned for the next episode. Take care and have a great day.